Well, welcome back to the Crossroads Commercial Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Bailey Wheeler, and today I am joined by one of my partners, team members, and president of Coldwell Banker, the Property Exchange, Ben Trautwein. How are
Thanks. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm
I'm
good.
ready to drop some serious knowledge.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited because we've interviewed every single other team member except for you. So we saved the best for last.
Yeah. Or the worst.
No.
Worst and oldest. Well, I guess Brad's older than me.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
No, happy to be here. Hopefully, I can provide some useful information.
Perfect. Well, we're going to just start out by sharing a little bit of your background, how you got started in commercial real estate. So I'll let you kind of take that away.
So, just back to when I started in commercial real estate.
Yeah, just give me a little background on your degree, how you ended up, kind of the journey to that, because I know you didn't start out in commercial real estate. There was a,
Well, let's go way back.
okay, we'll go way
I
back.
was born in a blizzard of 75 in Wheatland, Wyoming. No, it's like two lefts and a right, how you end up in commercial real estate. But I went to the Air Force Academy. I was in the military for 5 years, and I wanted to live in a city, so I moved to Boston and just wanted to check out city life for a while. And I worked for a financial consulting firm in Boston, and I worked there about 3 years. Ended up meeting my wife, who's from Wheatland. All the good ones are from Wheatland.
Always.
And so she wanted to live in Wheatland. I wanted to live in Boston. So like all compromises in our marriage, we ended up in Cheyenne, Wyoming. So she moved about 60 miles and I moved about 2,500. So we ended up in Cheyenne. And I'm still working for the consulting firm when we first moved to Cheyenne. And I was like, I had to fly out of DIA on Monday, and I'd be gone till Thursday night.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'd fly in and out and commute down there. And we just kind of decided that wasn't conducive to a healthy marriage. So I ended up quitting that job and started looking around in Cheyenne. And the first decently paying job that was kind of commensurate with what I was doing in Boston, I ended up being a private banker for Wells Fargo. And a private banker, and this is probably too much information,
No,
but
it's
we
great.
can cut it out, I guess. But a private banker recruits high net worth individuals and tries to get them to bring their accounts and their investments and their insurance and everything over to Wells Fargo, kind of their wealth management division. So I got hired to do that, and I did that for probably 9 months. And one of the high net worth individuals I ended up calling and scheduling a lunch with was Brad Graham. And, you know, I take him to lunch, and Brad's family and my family, we know a lot of the same people. And so we were talking about that, and I got about 30 seconds into my, hey, would you ever consider coming over to Wells Fargo? And I don't know if we can talk
Yeah,
about
no, that's great.
specific names,
Yep.
but he's like, yeah, no, I deal with local banks, and let me just stop you. He's like, I will never come over to Wells Fargo. But he's like, I have kind of been looking for somebody to help out with my commercial real estate business. And he's like, was that anything you'd be interested in? And I said, yeah, I not, at the time I just started this new job. And I was like, I don't think that makes a lot of sense. But he's like, no, it can be a good deal. You should think about it. And so um, after that meeting, we agreed to keep in touch and whatever. And about, I don't know, 3 months later, I had to get approval from some guys in Denver for a loan, which I thought was a no-brainer for this guy. It was worth $20 million, and they wouldn't give him a loan because his collateral was cattle. And they like the people in Denver like this can't be right. And I'm like, I'm done working with these people. This is Wyoming. They don't know. I was like, I got to find something else to do. So I called Brad back up and I said, tell me a little bit more about commercial real estate. And we started talking. And about a month later, I switched over and started working with Brad.
It's hilarious that he flips the script on you and asks you to come work for him when
Yeah,
you're trying to
no,
get his account.
yeah, I was like, oh no, I don't think I would do that. But well, and again, this is probably not podcast worthy, but the funny thing is, Edie, my wife's real risk adverse, and so I had a salaried job, and it was a good job, for Cheyenne. I was making pretty good money, And she like said, "Do you really want to give away the stability and go into commercial real estate?" And I'm a risk taker, so I was like, "Yeah, definitely." She's like, "All right, we're going to sign a contract."
The
And
two of you?
yeah, so she wrote up a contract, and it said basically if I don't make or exceed the same amount of money I was making with Wells Fargo, I had to quit after a year and then go back and get a salaried safe job. So
And you
that
never went back?
that first year I beat it by like 50% and never looked back.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, it's great background for us. So, Coldwell Banker is where you've been your entire career,
Yep.
correct?
That's correct. I started in September 2007. So it'll
Okay.
be 17 years
Wow.
in September.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, we never really touched on the other podcasts about Coldwell Banker and kind of the benefits behind the franchise. We heard from Brad kind of how it, how it got started and the history behind that. But, I've talked about this a ton. There are so many, for my personal success, so many reasons why I could tell you to be there, but that's because I haven't been anywhere else either.
Right.
So I would love to hear, your perspective of Coldwell Banker and why you think it's a great place to land.
Well, the biggest allure, I guess, is having the national brand. And that's what Coldwell Banker tries to, tell people. So it's the most recognizable real estate brand in the world. So that's a big allure. They actually, when we signed, and I can't even remember, I think it was probably 2010, because when I started, it was just the property exchange. We were coming off the heels of the Great
Recession.
Recession. So it was after the financial crisis, and real estate was pretty down. Homes were on market for 365 days. There was just way more listings than buyers, and it was a really tough time to start in real estate or to be in real estate. So they gave us a signing bonus for signing up with them, which was very helpful. But they provided training, they provide national exposure, and they have a referral system. And so there was just a ton of reasons we thought it made sense, and I think it's been great. There's a small fee we pay them each year, but we also a lot of times get money back because our company is so successful and our office is so successful. So we get a $50,000 to $60,000 bonus because we do so well, and Coldwell Banker pays that back to the company.
Wow.
So I think that's a great benefit. But there's just tons of support. You can find somebody all over the world really that's a Coldwell Banker agent, and I just think it gives you, it's kind of cheesy, but it gives you kind of global reach, even though you're in the small Wyoming market.
You've actually been to several like big conferences where you've met some other people for Coldwell Banker commercial, like globally and those big conferences.
Yeah, no, I try to go to a conference, like I tell all the young agents that they need to go to conferences and get as much education and exposure to what's happening in the other parts of the world and the country as much as you can. I just every time you go, they have some great classes and you learn some things and you meet people and you see how they're doing it. So you can't do that if you're for an independent firm in Cheyenne. So having that exposure and seeing, what else is out there is really important.
Yeah.
Which, it's kind of been a theme of my life. I love Wyoming, but I always wanted to get out of Wyoming and see what's going on. So traveled around the world, lived in a city, lived in 4 or 5 different places around the country. So I think that's been really helpful to me just from a perspective standpoint, and I think it's helped my career quite a bit.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so our team for the Graham Group is an umbrella under Coldwell Banker, and there's 5 of us, and we've all kind of talked about our roles, and we've kind of, heard Brad, and then you, and then Rob, and then the rest of us have kind of joined a couple years afterwards. You're a huge team builder. I would love to know why a team, why expand, the thought process behind that.
So I that's a long answer probably, but
Okay.
you kind of got to recognize, I think, in life what you're good at and what you're not good at. And so I've always been kind of introverted individual, likes to do my own stuff and control everything myself. And I'll go in and put in the extra hours and hopefully be successful. And working with Brad and now Rob, they're both a little more extroverted than I am. And they do a great job getting out in the community, talking to people. Where if you gave me my druthers, I'd probably just go from my house to the office, and I'd never do anything else. And I'm perfectly comfortable with that, and um, I'm actually happier when I'm doing that. So, but I realized that wasn't conducive to a successful commercial real estate business, and so once when Brad was there, he kind of ran the ship, and then when he left, I kind of took over, and I realized that, and this is funny from Rob's. I did watch Rob's podcast, but I named the Graham Group because I recognized that Rob was going to be a better kind of leader of a team and better kind of face out in Cheyenne for the team. So I said, let's call it the Graham Group. And he's like, are you sure? And I'm like, definitely. I think, it'll help you grow into being the leader I know you're going to be, and that it'll just help our business immensely. And so that's kind of why I
Okay.
decided, or we decided, and we agreed on it. So we talked through it, but that's how the Graham Group came about.
Wow.
It's a little shout out to Brad who trained me, and I could go on and on about everything Brad kind of taught me over the years. But so I was like, yeah, legacy, you're going to be here longer than me, all those kind of things. You started younger. And then with you in the lead, we're going to have a great opportunity to really grow our business and,
That's
and be really successful.
I did not know actually how the name came about, so that's really interesting.
Yeah, well, and again, exposure to other groups around the country, they usually have a head person. Like there's a really successful, I can't remember if they're JLL or Marcus and Milchap, but they're called the Kramer Group. And I just, Trautwein, that's not a name that goes well with group or
Sure.
commercial real estate. And I was like, the Graham Group, because, it just sounds really good, come off your tongue. And I realized that Rob would be a better leader than me. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how we got to
That's
the
super
Graham Group.
interesting. Well, I feel, there's a lot of people within real estate that would not work well in a team setting because, it opens up for more controversy when you're talking about, I mean, you're sharing everything. So the hopes in doing that is that you do more and it's bigger and you can expand more. And that's something that I have really appreciated, looking outside in when I first came in, because I've seen other people try to do that and it just falls apart. I mean, it works great for 2 months and then it just completely falls apart. So,
Right. And probably the biggest lesson I ever learned from Brad was to be more fair to other people than you are to yourself.
yeah,
And through investments and deals, and he would cut me in on stuff I had nothing to do with, because he's like, I want you to be successful. And so um, I think having that mentality, and Rob, is raised by Brad, so he's got the same mentality. And he and I have had a lot of conversations talking about you always want to be more than fair with everybody. And so and so when we hire somebody, one thing we're looking for, ambition, I think, is the number one priority we're looking for. But the second is you got to be a team player. You got to be willing to, help your client or help your team first, and then worry about yourself. So I think that's why hopefully we don't ever have any huge
no,
issues within our team. And it's been successful so far, but I don't know how long you've been.
3 years.
3 years, yeah.
Yep.
So Rob and I operated together like that for 3 or 4 years before you,
Hmm.
and so we've started building our team the last 3 years, and it's been great so far. And I think we have the right people, but that's you gotta make sure the people you bring on think the same way as you, or coach them up to make sure that everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, we all just works, I mean, really just seamlessly. It's kind of incredible, but I think that those foundations were laid from Brad to you, then to Rob, and then bringing those on. I mean, it's a very, sensitive thing to bring somebody in and, confidentiality, just there's a huge level of trust, and I am super thankful. So I don't take that for granted at all. I feel like we do that super
Right.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's probably one of the conferences I went to, but there was a guy there talking about if you're an individual operator, and this is when I was pretty much an individual operator. I mean, Rob and I were working together, but he said if you're an individual operator and you're trying to control everything, that's not the way to success. And he was like, you got to build a team, and you got to share in all your success, and you really have to embrace building a team and helping others out. And so I don't know, probably for the last 8 years, I've just been trying to, I've done pretty well in commercial real estate, and I saw the path, but I wanted to do more team building and leadership and helping others that are younger and up and coming. So that's kind of been my philosophy the last 8 years of my life. And it started with Rob. We sent Rob to a bunch of advanced training around the country to make sure he knew all the best practices. And then, when he and I got too busy and I was the marketer, I was always the marketer, and I was always the one going over the brochures with the marketing department because I had just had more exposure to that than
Sure.
Rob did. And so we're like, whoa, we gotta figure out something else because I'm spending a lot of time doing brochures and things like that. Like it's not a good use of my time. So that's when we decided we needed somebody. That's when our first growth was in hiring you,
Yeah.
marketing. Yeah.
It's crazy how we've.
Which has been, I just want to say that's been the best move we've made so
Well,
far.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm excited. I mean, I love this realm, and I feel like it just grows and it changes so much. It's sometimes hard to keep up with, but we stay really consistent in doing that. And so, podcasting is just like the next thing, and hopefully it's more educational for our listeners, and can provide something that we can look back on and share with people, and things that we've done, and really put our money where our mouths are.
Yeah.
So
No, I mean, I think it's great that we're exploring new options, and it's, you have to iterate or, have different ideas and try to figure out what works, what doesn't work. So, if this doesn't work out and we don't see like we're getting new clients or whatever from it, I think, that's fine. Then we'll move on and try
yeah,
something else. And
bend and flex.
that's right. Yeah, we'll just keep trying to grow.
Yep.
So yeah, I've always had a want to improve, try to grow, try to help others mindset. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I feel like we all, again, do that really well. Um, and, one thing that I think that is really important that we all just have, we're all really good about knowing what our roles are and being comfortable in that. And, I think if you let your ego get in the way sometimes on a team, you're going to be button heads more than you are, moving forward. And we all do that. I mean,
right.
so well.
No, I agree. And it's just all communication and being upfront about things, and you don't harbor any resentment. If there's a problem, you want to get it out in the open and talk about it. If you don't think something's fair, then hopefully we have an environment where everybody can talk and
Yeah.
say, hey, I I worked 90% of the time and I got a 10% commission on that. What's going on?
Yeah.
So, I don't think that would ever happen in our,
Right.
but I think again, trying to foster an environment where you're more than fair. Right? Like, like Rob and I'll sit there and be like, well, what do you think we should do here? And I'm like, you want to go 50-50? He's like, I think you worked a lot more. You should get 60. I'll do it 40. I'm like, no, 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 no. Bailey worked for like an hour on that. So we got to make sure, so
Yeah.
we talk
No,
like that all the
absolutely.
time. And that's absolutely where you want to be
Yeah.
with a team.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to some cooler, like more specific projects.
Cooler.
Yeah, cooler.
Our
I mean,
team's the
our
coolest.
team
Yeah.
is super cool. But let's talk about some specifics, specific developments or projects. First, I want to ask you, I've asked everybody this, and I'm curious what your favorite asset class is.
Industrial by far.
Everyone.
Yeah. It's
Love it.
it's the best it's the best asset class.
It's just steel building. So that's what just like enamors me that everybody says industrial.
I think, and I listened to Rob's, but I think he called it blue collar,
He
but
did?
I think it's people that are in business for themselves and are, trying to make a living. And so they're no nonsense and They're like, no, this works, this doesn't work, and you don't mess around with like, oh, what if would they go $1,000 off? They're just like, yep, that number works. Let's get it done, and let's move forward and go, which is exactly how I like to operate.
Black
So
and white.
yeah,
Yep, no gray.
yeah, and so good people that are trying to make their own living, and so they understand, and they're not. Nobody, again, people aren't trying to take advantage of each other. They're like, that's a fair number that I can make that work, and my business will be profitable if we go in at that number. So
Yeah.
let's do it.
Sweet. Well, we have talked about a couple with Brad, but I'd love, you were super involved, instrumental in the Niobrara Park with some grant money. We've done since I've been here, we've done the Overland Trails Business Park, but there's way more that I don't know. So I'd love for you to talk about maybe an industrial project that you think would be.
Yeah. So, well, the Niobrara was the biggest, I guess, development deal I ever did. Um, Basically, Brad and some guys put in a contract. And they're like, we're kind of busy, and they're like, here, Ben, just handle this. Make this work. And so, had to figure out a lot, which was great. It was a great experience for me. I think we started that in 2012. Started selling lots in like 2014 timeline. Um, so, but it was 100 acres. We developed into 20 lots that we sold off, and probably sold them off in like 2 or 3 years. So it was hugely successful, and it was interesting. It was in the county, but it was at the time there was a regulation where if anything was within a mile of the city limits, the city also had to be involved. And then Leeds was going to help us out, but they wanted to be involved, and so we had to meet with the city, the county, Leeds, and then we ended up involving the Wyoming Business Council. And so that was great because from talking to everybody, they said, hey, this might be something that a Wyoming Business Council grant would work for if you have a business that's willing to go into the industrial park. And we had been, we had other industrial listings. So we had a company and some people that Brad knew, and they were like, yeah, we'd love to expand into Cheyenne. And we're like, okay, if we get this park going, we can get a business grant for all the infrastructure into the 100 acres, and then we'll give you a discount on the lot. They'll buy the first lot. So it was kind of it was a great collaboration, and I was cutting my teeth there on learning the development process, getting things. Thankfully, well, I probably shouldn't say this, but it was in the county, so it was a little easier to get done
Sure.
than some developments are in the city. But that's where I learned a majority of my development skills, I guess.
And then you built a few buildings within the park yourself.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess the Niobrara is probably what it was, the springboard to bigger and better, more investment things for me. So I ended up building two, I probably built 5 buildings in the Niobrara,
Wow.
and a couple of them had tenant people, doing build to suits. And so I put together investment groups and built 2 individually, and then 2 or 3 we built and we got tenants in before they were even leased up. And a couple times we just got offers from investors. The United Rentals building, we had a 10-year lease with United Rentals, which is like a credit, the best industrial tenant you could ever have. And we had an investor come in and buy it at a 6 cap. And, everybody that had invested with us on that tripled their money before we even had it fully built.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it was amazing. Pretty lucky because that's when oil and gas was taking off. So, and that's why we started the park. But some of the things that came out of that were beyond our expectations for sure. But we were there, and we were doing things to try to make it happen. We were taking some risks and building some specs, and just trying to make things happen, and it just all came together a few times. So
Yeah, so tell me the date. Do you remember the date of that? 2012?
so I think we got everything approved, and we started in 2012. We got everything approved in 2013, and then we probably built the United Rentals building in 15 or
Okay.
so. Yeah.
So yeah, we're at that 10-year cycle that most everybody talks about in commercial real estate, where you hit that, where it happens again.
Yeah.
So we're kind of there again.
Yeah, well, so and yeah, I'd say at that time there was no industrial land really. And that's why we were looking. Camp Stool was just getting started. The Camp Stool Park was just getting started. That's about the same time we were developing lots. And there's a shortage of warehouses, which I kind of feel like there is again, in Cheyenne. So like right now, I'd say there's this, if the right opportunity came, you'd want to be building a spec warehouse right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's super interesting. So, in developing the park, and you've done both. You've done development from ground up, and then you've taken second gen buildings, retrofitted them for, found a good deal, fitted
Right.
them for buildings. What would you say? I mean, obviously the development, it's probably more headache than it is to retrofit, but what was your favorite, or what's your preferred method?
The 300% return in less than a year was my favorite. No, um, yeah, it just depends, but I think all things being equal, if you don't have to go through all the approval process with development and you don't have to talk to the city or the county and that something's already grandfathered in, if you could find a deal that makes sense, I think that's better. It's just way less headache and way less time, and you still have a producing asset at the time, once you're finished. So if you can find a property that's maybe undervalued, it's kind of like flipping a house, but it's just knowing the commercial real estate rents and if things are maybe undervalued or just need some better marketing. Yeah.
Sure.
So
So I'm going to ask you because I don't know. So development, when you build a brand new building, you've got depreciation. You're just starting that process because it's a brand new building. Whereas, you find this old building that basically has run its course for life for depreciation. Is that something that you look at when you?
so when you always want to take depreciation because it offsets your income
Sure.
if it's an income producing property. But when you buy a old building, you get to start the depreciation over.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. So you as the new owner, then you start depreciating the
Oh,
building
wow.
from the value you bought it at.
I did not know that.
And so that you have to take out, for say you buy $1 million building and the land's worth 100,000, then you start depreciating 900,000, the value of the building, not the land. So, but yeah, you get started over.
That is crazy.
Yeah. So if 100-year-old building you buy it tomorrow, you get to start taking depreciation on that 100-year-old building.
And how long, I mean, what's the average lifespan?
So there's a straight line depreciation for commercial property. I think it's I'm going to get these numbers wrong, but residential is a certain timeline, maybe 37 years, and then commercials like 25 years.
I think you're
Those
right.
aren't the right numbers, but
I think you're right on 25.
yeah, so you do a straight line depreciation. And then there's other ways. This is, getting a little more advanced, but there you can do cost segregations and you can accelerate the depreciation when you buy a building. We try to do that on all the commercial buildings we buy. We do a cost segregation, which is having an engineer come in and they analyze all the parts of the building, the electrical, the plumbing, any special features, and they accelerate the depreciation. So the first couple of years with the accelerated depreciation, you can be making $20,000 a year, which you're getting in distributions. But because of the depreciation, you're not taxed on that income at all.
Jeez. Okay.
So that's one of the advantages of investing in real estate is being able to depreciate. So I'm making good money. I'm in my
Hmm.
high tax bracket, but I'm not getting penalized for that income because it's showing as a negative on my K1s that are coming to me and my income. And then 20 years from now, when I'm not really working, then I'll have to pay back on that depreciation. I'll have to pay taxes on that depreciation, maybe, unless you 1031. But again,
Sure.
another
Sure.
story. So
Another conversation.
you have to eventually pay taxes on that depreciation, but hopefully you're in a lower tax bracket. And the it's called a recapture rate. The recapture rate for depreciation is 20%. So if you're making good income, your tax bracket's above 20%.
Wow.
So that's why you want to take the depreciation, especially when you're having good income years.
That's awesome. It's great information.
Yeah.
And then we can get into the syndication a little bit, but when you're looking at a property and you're holding it, like what's your goal to hold them? Like how long do you hold on to them for? right
Generally,
now?
yeah, generally when we do an investment deal, and if we're bringing in investors, we try to have an exit strategy in 5 to 10 years. So, after you get over a 10-year period, and if you're asking people for money to invest with you, you want to have an exit strategy because they want to know they're going to be able to get out of the deal eventually if you know if they can or want to or their circumstances change. So we always have a 5 to 10 year exit strategy, or somebody comes in, makes a great offer, we'll sell it sooner.
And was that worked out for most of the industrial properties that you've had throughout your lifetime?
Yeah, I just sold my last two that I built in the Niobrara Industrial Park. I sold both of those last year, and yeah, it worked out great.
Was
Kind of.
that like a 10-year? Well, yeah, it would have been almost a 10-year hold.
Yeah, I think I must have built those after So United Rentals really gave me confidence in going forward and doing more. And I had another one in there that we basically flipped. We were built it, great tenant, investor comes in, wants to 1031, sold it. So I was like, wow, I'm just going to do this the rest of my life. Just keep,
Yeah.
run the same playbook over and over and over. And yeah, it worked out great. So yeah, we had I think we had a 7 to 10 year exit, and we exited in year 8 on both those.
Wow. Have you ever sold one and then bought it back?
Yes.
You have?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
That's actually one. So I sold one to a oil and gas company, and they, made a healthy profit, and then they operated for a year, and they were like, oh, we're not going to be in Cheyenne. We want to go to Douglas. And they're like, I think we're going to put this up on the market. And they're like, called me and they're like, do you want to list it or what? And I'm like, well, what do you want to sell it for? And they're like, and again, rates had doubled from what they were paying when they first went in and bought it. So, the rental rate when they went in was $6 a square foot. And so they're like, oh, we're just going to buy it. And they bought it. And they're like, do you want to sell? Or yeah, we're going to sell. And rental rates are now $10 a square foot. So I knew as soon as they were out, I could get $10. I said, if you want to sell quickly, I'll just buy it. And they're like, well, what would you give me? And I'm like, this price. And they're like, fine, we just want to be gone. And so, yeah, rebought it and then leased it back up again and resold it again.
It's awesome.
Yeah. But you got to be careful. I mean, again, wanting to be fair with people,
Sure.
I gave them the whole scenario. I said, you could probably be a landlord and the rental rates are here now and
Right.
you could resell this and make some money. And they're like, we don't want to deal with
Yeah.
it. So, you got to make sure
Yeah.
you're always taking care of your clients.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And being fair to people. You don't want to be like, oh, that's probably worth 900,000 when it's worth 1.5
Right.
million or whatever. So,
Yeah. All right, so let's talk a little bit about syndication. So, can you explain sort of the concept of real estate syndications, for the listeners in your terms?
sure. I mean, a syndication is just there's a property and you don't have enough money to buy it. So you put together a group of investors and, ideally people or people that are financially savvy and want to make a good return. So it's got to be the right deal, but you put together a real estate deal. You can do it with a LLC, or there's general or limited partnerships, which I don't know if you've talked about that with Brad or not, but
He touched on it just a little bit. He kind of said the same generic situation, but I guess what I was trying to get through is, there are some. So for some syndication deals, right? I mean, there are plenty of investors or people that we know that could just do it by themselves. But why would you choose? Why would you choose a syndication instead of just doing it yourself?
I think there's yeah, it's just a different philosophy, and I hope I'm not sounding like a broken record here, but I found with a couple of the early ones, I saw a deal and I couldn't I couldn't pull it off myself. And so I asked friends, family, other business people I knew in town to kind of partner with us. And a lot of our partners are Brad Graham's connections. So a lot of our investors are kind of the older guys that have had successful business careers. And, you know, Brad showed them that he could make them money, and they've just always been interested in doing real estate deals. So first couple deals couldn't pull off by myself, and had friends and family. They went really well, and it was just my favorite thing to do is to put together a successful deal with a bunch of investors and then cut them checks for 5 years, and then hopefully they get all their money back plus a big bonus when we sell the property. So that's I think that's like my contribution to society is like trying to help people, grow their net worth, grow their personal wealth, and allow them to have financial stability that maybe they weren't going to have on on their other path, or accelerating that financial stability for them.
Sure.
So I've got friends, and their wives are like, oh, we just finished our basement, redid our old basement thanks to you. And so when somebody comes up and says that to me, I really enjoy that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so walk me through how you would structure a syndication deal and what you look for and
it's it's just, again, you got to know the market. Being in commercial real estate, you study the market. That's all you pay attention to. So things just pop up, and every once in a while you look at it, and then you can just see that it's undervalued when it gets listed for sale. Usually, most of the deals we find are off market for the investment deals, and it's just talking to people and being involved with commercial real estate. Our name's out there, and we're in commercial real estate, and like that oil and gas company just wanted to move on. They made a profit. They bought it, leased it for a few years, made a profit, and they just wanted to move on. So it's just understanding the numbers and how they work, and rental rates, and the financing piece, which anymore the last couple of years since interest rates went up, you can't really make a deal work if you're getting financing. So as we've bought the last 3 or 4 properties we've done with all cash, as you know.
Mhm.
So it's just having an understanding of how the numbers work, and what you can get for financing or not get for financing, and any repair cost. You go into a building and you can look at it and say, this probably costs, $50,000 to upgrade everything. So it's really attractive to a tenant.
Now, have you done syndications outside of Cheyenne?
I haven't done any that I led. I,
Sure.
I participate in, again, going to conferences and knowing people around the country. I've met some people that do exactly what I do. They're better than me. And so when one of those guys calls me and says, hey, I'm looking for an investor, I jump on those kind of deals. So I've seen how bigger operators, both multifamily, self-storage, I got involved in an industrial deal in Ohio once, and just I've seen how other people operate and what they do, and it's but personally, at one time I wanted to expand and have like a regional investment group, and it's kind of stalled out, I think, with the interest rate environment. So that's something maybe I'll pursue going forward, but most of the deals I've done have been in Cheyenne.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome. Well, um, I got to look at my notes here for just a second because I had one other question about that. Yeah. So what are we talked about some of the benefits and why you would syndicate a deal. What would be some of like the challenges of a syndication deal? You talked about the interest rates. What would be some of the other challenges?
Well, the biggest thing you want to protect against is it always takes more money than you think. So you want to build in a healthy reserve. If you think you're going to need to raise $1 million, you want to raise 1.4 million, so you have a good reserve. What if you're wrong? What happens if you're wrong and it starts losing money? So you got to kind of manage the risk with those things. You get caught in the market. I've had a few deals that we got caught in COVID. We didn't have any income when we were expecting income, and thankfully I had reserves. But it's risky, and the worst thing, if you're asking other people for money and then you lose their money,
Right.
and knock on wood, I've never had that happen yet. But I've had some deals that haven't gone as well as you thought they would. So that's risky, and that's something you gotta, I guess you have to be prepared for happening, prepared that it might happen. So you want to know who your investors are, because you don't want somebody that would just completely freak out if they weren't getting the money that you said you were getting. And yeah, you gotta make sure you're doing everything exactly how you said you would do it. And honestly, I guess you got to make sure you're doing things
Sure. Yeah.
honestly, because if a deal goes bad, people are going to start pointing fingers, and you got to make sure that you've done everything you can to try to make the deal work.
Yeah. Besides industrial, I mean, you've done syndications with just about almost every asset class, correct?
Pretty much,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Um, what, so storage units was something that you mentioned. You've been involved in a few of those,
right.
correct? Um, how do you feel storage versus like industrial and office? Like I feel like that's its whole own,
Yeah,
it's all,
so there's numbers on what are the best investment deals, but there's national companies that only do multifamily, and there's national companies that only do storage. And storage historically has been one of the safest investment classes,
okay.
and produced some of the best returns, even through recessions, even through COVID and other scenarios like that. So if you look it up and do a little research, you can find what's historically the best. And some people only do multifamily because it's the safest investment. People always need a place to live, whereas people don't always need a self-storage unit.
Sure.
Although America is addicted to junk, and then people love having a metal box full of stuff they never look at for years. But so yeah, I think that's just being knowledgeable in commercial real estate and doing your homework and making sure you're up on the current commercial real estate trends and knowing it's I mean, frankly, it's expertise,
Sure.
knowing
Experience
yeah,
and
experience and expertise.
yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think that that kind of contributes to one lower cost compared to building like a stick built house with your frame, the framing of a storage unit and then low maintenance costs?
Well, yeah. So advantages of storage are that a lot of times people move in and they'll not even think about it for 6, 8 months, and they've
Sure.
they've paid you for 8 months, and so you don't have people living there every day. Yeah, it's real low maintenance with metal, essentially miniature metal buildings. And there are different types of storage where you can have climate controlled, but
Oh, sure.
primarily here we just do regular, I guess, non-climate controlled. And a couple deals we got involved with in Arizona, we did half climate controlled and half normal. And so you need it in the desert or things dry out. But yeah, so it's easier construction. Anybody can put those up. I could probably put up a building if my life depended on it. And yeah, you have upfront costs, and if you manage that correctly, then you just have income coming in, and
Yeah.
you can fill the units, and you think there's demand. And that's the hardest part, I think, with storage is analyzing the demand and whether or not it makes sense to go ahead and build a unit without saturating the overall market.
Sure. Sure. Awesome. Well, we've kind of touched a little bit a wide variety of things, but as we get to the end, I would love to talk about the team and then just kind of, my personal experience with you on mentorship. I love how you're always pushing us to do more, bigger, think outside of the box, even though you say you're introverted. I feel like you really walk the walk when it comes to you don't ever ask us to do something that you wouldn't do. And so I would love to know how, like your day to day, how you got to do that because obviously you push yourself super far when it comes to business. I would love to know, like how you got there and your steps like during the day. I asked Rob the same thing.
So wait, you want to know my daily routines, or do you want to
Well,
know?
I want so okay, let me rephrase that. I want to know how, how you mentally get over some of those challenges yourself, and how that looks like in your day-to-day routine, and then what advice you would give to like a team member or myself to do those things and challenge yourself daily.
Okay, so my overarching philosophy is always improvement and growth. So I'm big on self improvement. I'm reading books like that, every month I pick up some book that, offers some advice on real estate or finances or fitness.
Sure.
So I'm always trying to figure out ways to hack improvements in some way or another. Daily routine, the way you can be the most productive in life, I feel, is to have the same routine every day where you have your workout first thing in the morning. You go do that. That's out of the way. So then, if real estate stuff gets in the way, you're not scrambling, or you don't miss a day with that. Try to I try to outline my three big things that I'm going to do the next day every night. It's like the last thing I do before I go to bed. I outline the three big things I do. So then when I do get to work in the morning, I've like, okay, what's number one? I'm going to knock that off first. And then what's two? I'm going to knock that out. And three. And you get in a routine where your three biggest things, the most important things you're done with, you got it knocked out. And then the rest of the day you can deal with any chaos or answer emails if you have to. And I've spent a lot of time kind of analyzing what's the most effective use of my time. And so that's not answering emails, and that's not, you know, going to luncheons and things like that. It's looking for deals, and it's what I'm best at, and it's what I enjoy the most, and it's where I make the most money. So I try to, um, like when I was making pamphlets for
Sure.
for our
Yeah.
marketing team, like that's not a good use of my time because I don't make any money off that. And so yeah, I spend a lot of time. I'm always thinking about processes and improvement and trying to become more efficient and trying to make sure I'm not wasting time on things that aren't making money or
Sure.
not helping our team. Um, as
So,
far
so besides fitness, what's a non-negotiable for you
Oh,
during the day?
anything with my family.
Yeah.
So family first, and then it's probably I I value fitness more than I do work, probably. Yeah.
Sure.
So that's very important to me. Just I'm a better person, and I do some spirituality stuff where I meditate every day. That I found that really helpful. That's made me a less irritated or angry person.
Sure.
So I've been working on that for like 10 years, and that's helped me out a great deal. And other than that, I don't answer my phone unless I know who the person calling is. And sometimes if I know who it is, I won't answer that. I try to delegate everything I can that's not a good use of what I feel is a good use of my time. So it's kind of a philosophy and something you can't do when you're starting out as an agent, but it's something the more you're in the business and the more comfortable you are with what you are and what you do and who you are, then you can do those things. As far and like team building, that's part of it. Like what I'm not I just spent all week working on this brochure and it's crap. So what do we need to do, Rob? And then we need to hire a marketing person. So that's how as I think, and I'm not a great businessman or a great business person, but I think that's how you get better is it's finding people that'll help you out through the process. So
Yeah. So, how long did it take you to get to the realization that that's, because like you said, it's super hard. I mean, I think for me especially, it's really hard because, you're trying to hustle, you're trying to make sure that you're doing all the things and learning everything that you can, but you just sometimes burn the candle at both ends and then you're going to drop a ball. So
yeah.
I've had to get like that, but it's taken me a while to even
Oh,
find a rhythm.
yeah, I wouldn't say I'm great at it now. So it's a process of just trying to figure out and put systems in place where you can, you got to get when have young kids, you're like, where's the one time I can get in my workout? You
Hmm.
gotta get up before everybody else gets up and do it.
Yep.
That's the only way you can make it work. So I've been working on that, I don't know, the entire time I've
Sure.
been in real estate. And, when you have a family and bring young kids into the mix, then you gotta figure it out. Like I was great when I first started real estate because we didn't have kids, but then 4 years into that, I had to figure everything else out. And for the most part, sleeping less.
Seems to be the theme.
Yeah, I mean that's the big key is you gotta give up some
Some Z's, yeah.
Yeah, Z's here or there. But there's a business coach named Dan Sullivan, and I can't think of the name of his strategic coaching. Maybe that's it. I think it's strategic coaching, but he wrote a series of books, and the first one is like Who Not How, and I read that, and it was like you need to find who's that'll do things that you don't want to do and that'll help you grow your business, and they're better than you at it, and they actually enjoy doing it, and if you can hire them and convince them to join you, then you can become more successful. Plus, you're helping people come, start a career. So you're a who of ours, who can do marketing and who can bring us up to speed and give us the best marketing department in Cheyenne. So that's I read that book, and then he's got a series of other books about becoming more efficient.
Sure.
I love that stuff, and I've spent hours and hundreds of books on how to
perfect that for
self
yourself.
improvement, and yeah, so I could talk about that all day. But that Who Not How. That was a big. I read that. We hired you. I had an assistant at the time, but I hadn't really coached him up. I didn't coach her up and do a good job leading her. So after I read that book, it gave me some structure in place where I could hire Lexi, and Lexi and I got busy so fast that we're like, we need another who to manage all the properties and everything we're doing. So then we brought on Morgan, and we're like, well, eventually, if Morgan does a great job, she can help us all out, which
Yeah.
she's done. And I feel we need another person already.
Yeah, we're close.
We need somebody to just go show property for us.
Yeah.
So I, if it's up to me, we'll hire another person this year or early next year.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. I think that's the scarcity mindset keeps people from growing because you feel like you have to keep it all for yourself when in reality again, who not how, and you get bigger and
Yeah, I
do
mean,
better.
if I'm working on that brochure all week, I could have missed a $10 million deal that we could have bought and made a commission and brought a bunch of investors in, and then sell it for 40 million 3 years from now, and
Yeah.
that how much money did that brochure cost me?
Yeah.
It potentially costed a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's opportunity cost.
Yeah. Well, what advice would you give to somebody who's listening or is a new commercial real estate agent, just getting started?
Just getting started. Well, so if you're a commercial real estate agent, it's hard to just jump in. You want to find a mentor. You want to find somebody you can lean on or that'll help you out. So I would say you need to find somebody that you can provide some value to. You try to become a who for somebody, and I, I think that's the best way to do it. But if you have a deal, you should just go for it and then figure it out as it goes along too. If you're a real estate agent, you haven't ever done commercial, you're always kind of interested in it, and an opportunity comes up, take that opportunity and see what happens and try to make it work. And you'll learn so much just by doing it. It's I think you and Rob talked about it's really not that complicated. People just get intimidated, and some people will try to dissuade you from going after a deal like that if you don't have experience. But I think you should go for it. You got to constantly be trying to improve, trying to learn, and you got to go to
Got to go to
conferences,
conferences.
take classes,
Sure.
spend a little money. That's the one thing at the property exchange or Coldwell Banker, the property exchange, I cannot get over. We specifically put in that program in place where we will pay for somebody to go to an education class because I just think it makes our agents smarter. It makes, it makes them more professional. It can help them. And, we have great agents, but nobody takes advantage of that. We'll pay $1,000 a year for some course. You should go take a little time and educate yourself and try to get a little bit better. And if you do that for 10 years in a row, you're going to know so much more than most agents
Sure.
in Cheyenne. So I probably haven't done a great job explaining all that to the agents in our group, but I just think that's the way to continue to grow and become more successful.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you from experience being on the other side of that, being a real estate agent, the mentorship program it wasn't even really a program. It was just something that you guys saw and I kind of stepped into, not even knowing it was a mentorship. And it has turned from mentorship to partnership and has turned into a huge team,
Yeah.
which is amazing. So thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Well,
Yeah.
no, you're welcome. There's a African proverb, and I don't know, people steal it all the time, but it's like if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to really grow and become, well, this is my take on it. You want to become a better version of yourself and create an environment where it's not just you doing well, it's everybody doing well. So if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. So have a group. So
Yeah.
that's
I
my philosophy.
I think it's a great way to end the podcast. Well, thanks for being on. I'm sure you'll be on again, and this was awesome.
You're welcome.
Okay.